Have you ever wondered how entire societies can descend into madness without even realizing it? How seemingly rational people start defending absurd ideas as if they were absolute truths? This isn't a coincidence. This is mass psychosis. Make no mistake, no one is immune. You might already be affected without even knowing it. What drives a society to insanity? Who truly benefits from it? And most importantly, is there a way out? Today, we'll uncover what few dare to expose. A phenomenon that has shaped history, destroyed civilizations, and is more present than ever. If you think you're in control of your own mind, think again. Welcome to the hidden side of mass psychosis. Imagine a society where millions of once rational people suddenly start embracing irrational beliefs as if they were undeniable truths. This phenomenon, known as mass psychosis, occurs when a large group of individuals loses the ability to distinguish between reality and illusion, creating a collective mindset where logic dissolves. Carl Jung referred to this as a psychic epidemic, a state where dominant ideas do not arise from a rational assessment of facts, but from widespread emotional contagion. This isn't just a failure of human thinking, it's a reflection of how the collective mind can be easily manipulated by external forces. What makes mass psychosis so dangerous is that it doesn't just distort people's perception of reality, it shapes their very identity. In his classic work, The Crowd, A Study of the Popular Mind, Gustave Le Bon pointed out that when an individual becomes part of a psychotic group, they lose their capacity for critical thinking and start acting on primitive impulses without even realizing their perception has been altered. When the human mind is immersed in an environment where delusional ideas are constantly reinforced, it creates a false sense of coherence. Distorted beliefs become the new truth, and anyone who dares to question them is labeled as an enemy. This is one of the most dangerous aspects of mass psychosis, its ability to sustain itself indefinitely. To understand how this process unfolds, we need to examine the role of fear and uncertainty in shaping the human mind. Hannah Arendt, in her analysis of totalitarianism in the 20th century, observed that moments of crisis and collective disorientation create the perfect breeding ground for the rise of extreme ideologies. When people feel vulnerable and desperately seek explanations for the chaos around them, they become easy prey for manipulated narratives. At this stage, society begins creating imaginary enemies, blaming specific groups for their problems, and accepting authoritarian solutions as the only way out. This is how mass psychosis becomes a self-sustaining force, capable of reshaping entire civilizations. Mass psychosis doesn't happen overnight. It follows a predictable process, unfolding through three distinct stages, as described by Silvano Arietti, one of the greatest authorities in 20th century psychopathology. This process reveals how a society can be gradually driven into madness without its members realizing the transformation. First comes the stage of fear and disorientation, where the population is subjected to intense anxiety and uncertainty. Then, the stage of delusion construction emerges, in which the mind desperately seeks explanations for the chaos, even if those explanations are irrational. Finally, there is the stage of normalization, where the distorted reality becomes the only acceptable truth. When combined, these three phases create a dangerous cycle, plunging entire societies into prolonged states of irrationality. The first stage, fear and disorientation, is critical in destabilizing the collective mind. Just Merleau, in The Rape of the Mind, explains that when fear becomes chronic, it paralyzes rational thinking and opens the door to psychological control. Governments, media, and institutions often use this strategy to create a state of vulnerability within the masses. Historical examples include economic crises, terrorist attacks, and even pandemics, where populations are subjected to a constant emotional overload. Excessive fear places people into a reactive mental state, where logic and critical thinking are replaced by emotional impulses. The second stage, delusion construction, occurs when the mind, unable to cope with chaos, desperately seeks meaning. At this point, false narratives, manipulated information, and irrational beliefs begin to seem like comforting alternatives to escape collective anxiety. Silvano Arietti described this process as the moment when the psyche constructs a new reality in order to survive. This phenomenon has been observed throughout history, from totalitarian regimes to cults and radical movements. The more people cling to the constructed narrative, the harder it becomes to question it. The delusion is reinforced through social mechanisms, such as censorship of opposing opinions and persecution of dissenters. In the third stage, normalization of mass psychosis, the illusion becomes part of the culture. Hannah Arendt documented this phenomenon while analyzing totalitarian societies, where irrational beliefs become widely accepted without question. Society enters a state of extreme conformity, where disagreeing becomes dangerous. This stage can be seen when entire groups begin to act in completely irrational ways, justifying absurd measures as if they were natural. Anyone who dares to challenge the illusion is labeled a conspiracist, an enemy of progress, or any other term designed to silence dissenting voices. And with that, the cycle is complete. Mass psychosis sustains itself, feeding off its own momentum. Mass psychosis, which once spread gradually through political rhetoric and mass ideologies, has now found its primary fuel in social media and digital technology. What used to take decades to develop can now happen in a matter of days. In The Rape of the Mind, Just Merleau warned about the dangers of psychological manipulation on a massive scale, but even he couldn't have predicted the impact of modern algorithms. Today, illusion doesn't just spread faster, it feeds itself, creating ideological echo chambers where critical thinking dissolves and conformity is rewarded. One of the most dangerous aspects of social media is its ability to reinforce pre-existing beliefs through algorithmic filtering. Unlike traditional media, which once offered a variety of perspectives, modern algorithms tailor the information people receive based on their preferences and past interactions. This creates echo chambers, where individuals are only exposed to content that confirms their existing views, completely eliminating the possibility of healthy debate. Hannah Arendt warned that manipulation of information was a key tool for totalitarian regimes, and today, that manipulation occurs in a nearly invisible way, with each user receiving a personalized version of reality. Beyond algorithmic bias, information overload and constant exposure to fear play a crucial role in shaping modern mass psychosis. Psychiatrist Carl Jung believed that excessive stimuli can lead to dissociative states, where the mind loses its ability to distinguish between what is real and what is fabricated. In the digital age, this manifests as moral panics, where sensationalized news and misinformation spread faster than verifiable facts. The longer we remain immersed in this distorted digital reality, the harder it becomes to maintain our mental clarity. Social media is no longer just a tool for connection. It has become a powerful weapon in the formation of mass psychosis. Mass psychosis is not a new phenomenon. Throughout history, entire societies have fallen into collective delusions, committing unthinkable acts under the influence of extreme ideologies, irrational fears, and psychological manipulation. What's most alarming is that, in retrospect, these events seem absurd, but for those who lived through them, they felt completely rational. As Gustave Le Bon explained in The Crowd, a study of the popular mind, crowds never reason. They accept or reject ideas as a whole without the ability for critical analysis. To understand how this phenomenon manifests, let's examine 3 historical cases that exemplify the depth of mass psychosis. One of the most infamous examples is the witch hunts of the 15th and 16th centuries. During this period, thousands of people, mostly women, were accused of witchcraft and executed in mass hysteria. At the height of this delusion, mere suspicion was enough to justify torture and mass executions. Historian Francis Hill, in The Satanic Delusion, describes how entire villages were left without women after the persecution frenzy ended. The widespread belief that invisible forces were threatening society was used to justify atrocities, demonstrating how fear can cloud rational judgment and lead to extreme actions. Another classic case is 20th century totalitarianism, exemplified by regimes like Nazism and Soviet communism. Millions embraced ideologies that in hindsight seemed destructive and irrational. Hannah Arendt, in The Origins of Totalitarianism, explains that these regimes thrived not just through force, but by creating an alternative reality where critical thinking was suppressed and questioning was punished. Mass psychosis didn't just justify persecution and massacres, it created a sense of belonging, where people believed they were on the right side of history, regardless of the atrocities they committed. This demonstrates how an entire society can be led to normalize the absurd without realizing the depth of their own delusion. Finally, in the modern era, social media has amplified mass psychosis in new ways. Examples include moral panics, such as the Mandela effect, where large groups believe in events that never happened, and digital cults that promote extreme ideologies despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Psychiatrist Carl Jung argued that when the human mind is isolated from objective reality, it creates mythologies to fill the void. Today, that mythology is fueled by disinformation and algorithmic reinforcement, making mass psychosis even more dangerous. History teaches us that whenever a society ignores the warning signs of mass irrationality, the consequences are devastating. The question is not if this will happen again, but when and in what new form. Many people believe they are immune to mass psychosis, but the truth is, no one is completely protected from this phenomenon. Mass psychosis doesn't attack the mind directly. It operates subtly, infiltrating daily life through carefully constructed narratives. As Just Merleau explains in The Rape of the Mind, the first victory of psychological manipulation is making the victim believe they are thinking for themselves. This means that the more convinced you are that you're in control of your own thoughts, the higher the chance that you've already been influenced without realizing it. Mass psychosis doesn't require coercion. It thrives on social conformity and the passive acceptance of prepackaged ideas. One of the clearest signs that you may be affected is a decline in critical thinking and an intolerance for opposing viewpoints. If you automatically reject any idea that challenges your beliefs without even analyzing it, it could be a sign that your perception has been shaped by ideological or emotional bias. Carl Jung warned that the more a person projects their shadows onto others, the less aware they become of their own darkness. In other words, when a society starts demonizing those who think differently, treating them as enemies rather than individuals with different perspectives, there is a high risk of mass psychosis taking hold. This mindset is reinforced by social media, where algorithms ensure that you only see opinions that align with your own, creating an artificially homogeneous reality. Another alarming symptom is constant fear and dependence on collective validation. Hannah Arendt explained that totalitarian regimes intentionally keep populations in a state of chronic anxiety because a society that lives in fear is easier to control. If you notice that your decisions and beliefs are being guided by a fear of exclusion, attack, or cancellation, there is a strong chance that you are experiencing the effects of psychological manipulation. Mass psychosis thrives on fear and conformity. And the more you feel compelled to follow the crowd without questioning, the more you lose your individuality. The real question we must ask ourselves is, how much of what we believe is the result of our own analysis, and how much have we simply absorbed without reflection? If mass psychosis is a mental trap, escaping it requires awareness, discipline, and active critical thinking. The first step is recognizing that we are all susceptible to external influences that shape our beliefs and perceptions. As Carl Jung put it, "He who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens." This means that the real antidote to mass manipulation is self-awareness, the ability to question your own convictions, identify cognitive biases, and resist the temptation to follow dominant thinking out of mere conformity. By developing this awareness, you shield yourself from the invisible grip of mass psychosis. Beyond self-awareness, the pursuit of diverse information and reliable sources is essential to break free from illusion. Just Merleau warned that a society that does not question the official narrative is a society that has already lost its mental freedom. This means you must expand your knowledge sources, explore different perspectives, and avoid falling into ideological echo chambers. Václav Havel, a dissident under the Czechoslovak communist regime, called this the creation of parallel structures. In other words, building independent knowledge and discussion networks that exist outside the dominant narrative. By diversifying your exposure to information and maintaining a healthy skepticism, you arm yourself against psychological control. Finally, one of the most powerful weapons against mass psychosis is authentic human connection. Totalitarian regimes always seek to isolate individuals and weaken community bonds because lonely people are easier to manipulate. Hannah Arendt observed that isolation is one of the pillars of totalitarianism, as disconnected individuals lose their sense of reality. To prevent this, strengthen your relationships with people who think independently, engage in deep conversations, and avoid the cycles of hostility and hatred that mass psychosis promotes. When you cultivate an independent mind and reinforce real-world connections, you become immune to the illusion of the masses. The price of freedom has always been vigilance, and in today's world, that vigilance begins within your own mind. In the end, mass psychosis forces us to make a fundamental choice: remain in the comfortable illusion of the group or seek freedom, even if it means going against the current. Carl Jung once said, "Freedom is not something given, it is something conquered." True freedom, in the context of a society trapped in mass psychosis, is not just about political movements or external choices, it is an internal battle. For many, breaking free from collective illusions requires a deep commitment to authenticity and inner truth, regardless of social pressure. The urge to conform is strong, but the price of submitting to mass psychosis is far greater. This brings us to the importance of maintaining critical thinking and an open mindset. In times of crisis, it is tempting to accept easy and comfortable narratives. But as Hannah Arendt and Václav Havel taught us, true resistance begins with an independent mind. Fighting against mass psychosis is not just a political stance. It is about preserving your ability to think freely, to question, to learn, and to keep challenging the reality around you. For those who choose freedom, the journey will not be easy. But as Albert Camus said, the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. By refusing to submit to mass psychosis, you don't just protect your own sanity. You become a beacon of hope for others trapped in society's lies and manipulations. History has shown that societies do not need unanimity to resist mass psychosis. The simple act of questioning, refusing to follow the crowd, and thinking independently can be the key to restoring collective sanity. Freedom of thought is the final line of defense against the tyranny of the masses, and those who preserve it, even if they are few, have the power to change the course of history. So the final question remains: will you choose freedom, or will you surrender to illusion? Mass psychosis has always existed, and it always will. Independent thinking has never been rarer. Is the world around you conditioning you to accept truths without question? To live in fear? To see enemies where they might not even exist? If this video made you think differently, then you've already taken the first step toward breaking free from the cycle of manipulation. But now, I want to hear from you. What do you think? Have you noticed signs of mass psychosis in society? Have you ever felt like your opinions were shaped by external forces without you even realizing it? Drop a comment below. Your perspective might help open someone's eyes. And if you found value in this video, support this message. Leave a like, as it helps this content reach more people who need to hear it. Subscribe to the channel to keep exploring this journey of self-awareness. And turn on the notification bell so you never miss another video like this. Thank you for investing your time here. In a world that pushes conformity, you chose to question. See you in the next video.